it's challenging in the beginning because you're so used to getting that paycheck every week. And now you have to be in charge of making sure that you have enough in the bank to live on.
She just sold her company. She sat in a room full of men negotiating the biggest deal of her lifetime. Wait, she sold for how much? I can't even believe she managed to get double her valuation. Let's keep this just between us.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Exit Whisperer. Today is a day to just imagine. Imagine what is possible, manifest what you want in your life, and just embrace optimism. This is the energy of my next guest, Colleen West. Colleen built a court reporting business. She started it as a single mother with no money and no college degree, put herself through court reporting school, started as a court reporter, and went on to build one of the preeminent court reporting firms. In the process, she also built another business, bought another business, a transcription business. And then she went through a couple of potential sale opportunities. Didn't happen, but it turned out that it was the best thing ever. She had an amazing unlocking of growth and was able to sell to one of her original acquirers, interested acquirers. And it just worked out exactly as it should have. Colleen is an example of somebody who dreams the life she wants and then goes out and gets it. And I think you guys will be crazy inspired by her story. Take a listen. Welcome, Colleen, to the show.
Hi, Carrie. How are you? Thanks for having me. It's exciting.
And I'm so happy to have you. I feel so connected to you. I love your story. I watched a beautiful interview that you did a few years back, and I was like, I need to have her on this show, and she needs to share this incredible story. And so really, truly welcome. I feel very lucky to have you here.
Thank you. I'm so happy we were brought together.
Yes. Okay. So tell me the story of the start of your business, because I know that this is a story that's very inspiring and one that many women can relate to.
Well, I was 28 years old and I had a 9-month-old and an almost 3-year-old. They were 2 years apart. And my first husband just decided he didn't really want to be married anymore. And he, need to know all the details, but I got divorced and I was strong. Probably a lot of people wouldn't have and would have stayed in something that wasn't a good place. Um, I never went to college. I never thought I was smart. I knew I had a lot of common sense and I knew I had great people skills. I love people. I love talking to people. And I guess that's what really helped me in life, and I kind of faked it where I had to.
Yeah.
And in the very beginning, I was always kind of like embarrassed to tell people that I didn't go to college. And then I went to court reporting school when he left. And it was a 4-year class at night. And it was tough getting people to get babysitters and stuff like that. So I knew I had to get out in less than 4 years. So I really crammed and I practiced and practiced and practiced. I did not want to go on welfare. I wasn't getting child support. I did have wonderful support from my family, thank goodness, which was so incredibly helpful. And then I got out of school in a year and a half, and I thought, how did I do that if other people are still here after 4 years?
Wow.
So I was really nervous.
Like you picked up the pace to get through in a year and a half.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like when you learn court reporting, it's like a skill. So like learning the piano and it was just practice. I practiced 24/7. I just knew I had to take care of my girls. Science and math and social studies really made me scared and I was afraid to go, back to school and I didn't want to go back to college. I finished my class and I started working for a very lovely firm out east and they built up my confidence incredibly. And I basically one day on the LIE, I said, I think I could start my own company. I think I should just turn my car around and go to the clerk's office and start a DBA. That would be the easiest thing to do. So that's what I did. I one day after taking a job, I had gotten two big insurance companies that I bought into the company I was working with.
Okay.
And then I basically said to them, I only want to do work for these companies.
Okay.
And then I started noticing that they saw I'm good. I was good bringing in business, and I wasn't getting all my work, and it was disappointing. So that was when I decided, yeah, I'm going to start my own company.
Ah, because you saw that the strength that you showed real strength in bringing in new business. So that would have given you.
And then they didn't want to send me out on the jobs that I wanted to go to. Like I wanted to work for certain people that I bought. And I noticed there was times, and they noticed as well, like, why aren't you here yesterday for the deposition? I'm like, you know? And so it just all hit me that I had and I had really good jobs when I was younger. And I, I knew I could run a business. I just knew I could do it. I knew I could learn it. I started the DBA and I had two defense clients, and I knew I needed one plaintiff firm. So I just drove right to Sibon and Sibon, and Andy Sibon. I have goosebumps when I mention his name because he really gave me this amazing opportunity. And I said, I'm a single mom. I just started my company like today. And I wondered if you'd put me on your vendor list. And so here I was working out of a 2-bedroom condo with these little tiny babies. I got an 800 number back then. I'm dating myself. It was over 30 years ago. I got a fax machine, an 800 number. I got brochures, and I made it look like I was a bigger company than I was. Really, I was just this little girl in a 2-bedroom condo. And then it just started taking off. And all of a sudden, then I had 2 jobs on. And then I'd have to go back to the school that I stayed very close with. Eventually, I got on like their advisory board. So I stayed very close to their graduates and hired from the school.
How old were the girls when you went off on your own at that point?
When I actually started the business, Erin was like 3.5 and Shannon was like 5.5.
It's
Not
funny
even.
I ask because we have a similar story in that part that I actually don't often talk about. I was married prior to my husband, now Dave, and my daughter was 3 years old, and I was on the LIE commuting to WBLI radio station. And the commute for me, it was, see, for you, it sounds like they weren't putting you in the jobs you wanted. For me, it was this massive commute and feeling like I knew how to drive new business and maybe I could start some consulting on my own. But the driver, and I think the grit of a single mother when you need to survive and provide for those babies, I think it's unstoppable. Personally, I think it's unstoppable.
It was definitely what, it gave you all the motivation to wake up every day. And listen, I do believe that some of us have different DNA where I am just a very happy person in general. I like to wake up and live in my moments. That's my favorite phrase, live in your moment. The present is a present, but even when all the bad stuff happened, I tried to stay that way. Like I bought a boat when I was after I'd started running the companies for a little while, because I bought another company later on, but I bought a boat when I was 40 years old, and I only did it because we couldn't go on vacations, and I just wanted to have fun with my girls. So as soon as work was over, we'd like, all right, let's go water skiing, let's go tubing, let's go over to fire. And that was how we had fun. But I made sure we had fun,
Yes. Yes. Well, okay. So I'm thinking about you going from starting this business and I'm picturing you like with the fax machine and getting all, really making yourself look bigger than you are. And then I'm thinking about you as a single mother, and I'm thinking about you're now bringing on, you sourced court reporters from the university, right? You had talked about that you sourced.
Yeah, it was called the Long Island Business Institute.
Okay. Was it a risk for you when you were growing, was it a risk to grow, or was it like you had the new business and then you staffed?
So that was always very tricky, right? Because you never want to grow too fast where you can't take care of your clients, right?
Right.
And so that was that was probably the most challenging part of realizing, like, okay, if I'm going to grow this company, I'm going to need to hire more people, but then I also have to know I have work to keep them.
Yeah. and you don't come from anything, and you have two children at home, and you're a single mom. And so balancing that cash flow must have been really challenging.
It was really challenging, but I somehow always figured it out. I think I'm a risk taker, right? Like it was always in my blood to be one. And I guess I just always said like, all right, so I have these two insurance companies. I'm obviously going to have, so and then getting paid in the beginning was also really difficult, right? Like having that cash flow.
Yes.
I always tell people now when I meet them, when they say, even one of my friends just went from being with a big corporation as a doctor to being on her own. And it's challenging in the beginning because you're so used to getting that paycheck every week. And now you have to be in charge of making sure that you're have enough in the bank to live on and or just live on. Like, believe me, I was very poor in the very beginning. We ate peas and pasta, hot dog, like not hot dogs, I mean like hot dogs, but we ate very, very moderate, like very inexpensive food, and I had no pictures on my walls, like, and I like nice things, so I wouldn't
Right.
buy things unless I could have nice things. So yeah.
That's
um
amazing. So
yeah.
when did it go from Colleen bringing on some reporters from the university to the size that you grew to? When did you really realize that this was something substantial? You mentioned you actually bought a business too, and like tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So what happened was it was in my two-bedroom condo when I first started.
Okay.
And then I moved to a house and now I had a basement. So I made the basement into my office, and I
Okay.
actually had people coming to my house, and I was, I go crazy now looking at how people just don't get up and get dressed and try to make themselves look nice every day, because no matter what, you should. It's just good for your whole mind to
Yes.
wake up and feel good,
Yes.
right?
A sense of
Um,
order too. Like
yeah.
start the day, we get ready. Yes.
Yeah. And so I would get up, I'd put my suit on, and I'd have two people came into my house. I had to buy a copy machine because court reporting, you have to provide transcripts. So I changed my laundry room upstairs and made it into a copy machine. Everyone thought I was crazy. Everyone. Because I mean, I was really didn't have a lot of money, and I just took chances and bought things. And then little by little, as I realized that, wow, I could do this, I could have more volume. When I was actually a court reporter, so I would go out on the jobs, and that was how I built my business. I would tell the attorneys, I just started my company. Will you give me a chance? I'd love to work with you. And it was really amazing how many people wanted to support me, and the great family of attorneys and people that work for insurance companies that I became friends with. That really, I did a lot of networking. I went to a lot of different events and handed out my cards. And I wasn't great at sales. I was just more winning from making friends.
It
And
sounds like you were a relationship driven sale. Like you networked, you knew people, people liked you, they did business with you, and then you
Mhm,
sure did excellent work. I'm sure it was
mhm.
also based on the quality of the work.
Yeah.
So
And then as it got bigger, I would call the school, and the same, you do the same thing with the people that work for you. You want them to be as happy with you as your clients are. And unless they trust you and know that you're going to have their back and be there. So that was just another part of, you know, I loved the people part of it, and I miss that. I do miss that. I loved the people part, and it just started to grow little by little by little. I think when Erin turned my youngest daughter, who's now a radiologist, that's whose house I'm in. My oldest daughter's a teacher. She went off to college, and then she was alone. Erin was alone in the house with me, so I got her a dog so I could move out of my house and get an office, because I knew that being in my home was not putting me in that same light as other bigger companies. Like, I didn't want to look like a little company that was working in my house. I
yeah.
didn't want. So when Erin got into junior high school, and when she got into 11th grade, when she was a junior in high school, I found a place in Sayville,
Okay.
and I built it out, and I had a designer come in and make it beautiful, and built out different rooms. And at that time, I bought a franchise. I remortgaged my house for $100,000, and I bought a franchise because I said to myself, I could run this company. Why can't I run another company? Like, it was very similar. It was transcription as opposed to court reporting.
Oh, okay. bought a transcription franchise.
I did. And that was having the franchise was helpful because that really gave you the comfort that you needed for tools for marketing and stuff like that. But I put in 40 phone lines into my house. There were so many crazy things that I did to build my businesses.
I
Um,
see the transcription business that you bought, the franchise business was separate from the court reporting business.
Yep, I started two separate corporations.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And so then when I bought that, that was when I realized I couldn't be a court reporter myself anymore.
Yeah.
And I had to run both companies and manage both companies and build the second company too. And that was a little more challenging because that wasn't my thing. I wasn't a transcriptionist. I was court.
I'm so interested in this. Do you recommend, if you can, doing multiple businesses and buying more than, having more than one business under one?
Absolutely. I mean, that for me, I'll tell you in so many ways how it helped. When you have cash flow with one company, you have the other company, you just lend the company money and it helps you. It gives you that extra layer of security. They kind of went hand in hand. Like the transcription company does hospitals, it does lawyers, it does insurance companies, IME companies. So there was a little bit of an overlap. So I was able to market the transcription company to my legal clients because they dictate after depositions. So a lot of them would use it. The
I love
tricky
that.
Yeah, the tricky part was getting into the medical part of it because I didn't have that medical terminology background. But then I partnered with a company out west that actually called they were Career Blazers. It was a great company for me to hire transcriptionists from because they do all the testing and they give you people that are trained in different areas. So, and then once I had that company and I worked my butt off. I literally, before I went into my offices, I would be down in my basement sometimes till 3 o'clock in the morning. I had to learn that transcription company from scratch. I had these Stedman books that had medical terminology, and I would go through what would take me, this is really the truth, what would take me 7 hours, like a 2-minute dictation, because it was medical and I didn't know it. Before you start hiring people, you have to know what you're hiring them to do. It would take what would take me like 7 hours to do. I got paid like $2 for.
I think I know the answer to this from knowing and just reading your energy from this, but was there any point where you were worried that it wouldn't work, or were you always just
Nope,
optimistic?
I was always like, I'm not giving up. I'm
Okay.
not like this is gonna happen. I am not like I am going to be good at this. I wasn't with the court reporting business. I felt safer.
Yeah.
I felt because
That makes
it
sense.
was my niche, and I started to make so many friends with the bar associations, and women were very helpful. Like we all stick together too. I never liked to separate myself as
Yeah.
a woman in business. However, I like to be a person in business.
I think
Um,
it's very important. And
mhm.
listen, I think it's essential to have a sort of collection of women who get it and who have been through similar experiences who can help you. But I think it's very important.
Well, we're cheerleaders to each other, right?
Right, right.
Mhm.
When operating in business, we operate in a non gender specific world. I mean, it's the world of business. And so
Right.
so I think that's really
Yeah,
important. Glad you said
that's
that.
right.
So, okay, so we have the franchise business and we have the court reporting business, and now you have an office, you've built it out. When does selling come into the picture? And it's kind of fortuitous when you tell this story because you are sitting, I think, in a very special space related to
I am. I'm at my daughter Erin's house in Connecticut, and her husband he has like his MBA, and he's just a really very financially, intellectually smart. And so he would always like ask a lot of questions about what I was doing. And I built out the business a lot over the years and buying office spaces like in New York City, not but renting office spaces and the city and White Plains so that I could expand and grow and have a bigger geography. Like with the court reporting field, it mattered to have offices in Brooklyn or in
Yep.
Queens so that if a client said, well, we have a deposition there, I don't want to have to give them to another company. Then I
Right,
was losing business.
right.
So Josh would always listen to me. And I did start getting approached probably about 12 years ago, I was approached by a big national company, and it just started my wheels spinning, and I would be talking out loud about it. And basically, the numbers weren't like I couldn't live for the rest of my
Right,
life on the
right.
numbers, but I did learn through that process. Even though we never went through any of the due diligence, we never it really didn't get that far, but I asked tons of questions.
Mhm.
And then I decided this is, and the other part is I cared about my employees and my court reporters so much that no matter who, and I say this, I think I mean it still. I gave up so many opportunities because they weren't going to hire and keep my people. And I made a choice that I wasn't put on, I like my heart, and I have to sleep well, and I care about people, and I can't do such a selfish thing and not make sure that they're going to be okay. I mean, I don't know. Like I think I still feel that way, but maybe if the opportunity had come again, now that I've learned a little bit more about people too, and you realize that people can move on, and
Yeah, I agree with you totally on this and had the same experience. And I think this is one area where gender often does come into play. Like women are very focused on taking care of their team and the longevity of their team.
Mhm,
And I think when you have more experience in business through like with many different businesses, you realize that
mhm.
sometimes people move on and like it's not your business isn't your baby or it's hard to
To separate.
separate it
Mhm.
is it's
Yeah,
really
and I listen, you know how many times I was criticized over the years, other women would say to me, "You are way too emotional and personal with your employees. I can't believe you say I love you to them." That is my personality. I said my husband always says it. "You say I love you to everybody." I said, "Not everybody. I have to really like them a lot, but I do use those words freely." And so I wasn't a very corporate minded kind of, I owned my companies 100%, and I could make all the decisions I wanted to the way I wanted to.
yes.
And so, but I was told many times that I would have been way more successful had I been more business-like with
But
people.
you were if we're very, very similar, and I think for me, it was like, could I live with myself, and did I feel good about who I was as a person in that moment? And even looking back, maybe I might have done some things differently, but ultimately, I can stand with my head held high and feel like I lived true to my values, and also very similar with the I love yous. Like, I really
Yeah, I could
put
sense
so
that you're
much of
similar
myself
personality.
so much of myself in you. And so, okay, so you've been approached, you don't take any of
I
this,
didn't
you
take it,
learn
and
not
yep, and that was tricky because, you wanna talk to people about it, but you can't. Like,
you can't.
you can't tell people that you're even thinking like that you were even approached. My court reporters were so important to me, my people in my office, I didn't want them to be afraid and leave because I didn't know if it was gonna happen.
And so when does it actually happen?
So then, right before COVID, it just seemed like maybe a year before COVID, it seemed like all these big national companies were just very eager to gobble up companies my size to give them because actually ultimately the company that bought me had a business that they purchased. They're in Texas. They actually did a merger and acquisition with another court reporting company on Long Island, and so they were further out west. And I mean, I'm pretty sure that obviously I was in their way a little bit, like because I was really doing well
Yeah.
out Nassau and Suffolk. I have a decent amount of city work too, but mostly I was Nassau and Suffolk and a little bit of Queens. And I think that they just saw, and then when they got to know me, they saw that this is a company that we'd be interested in. The first one, the first time it happened, it was again not. It was ridiculous how it was laughable what they said it was worth, and I just like I'm not interested. This is not even close to what I'm thinking or what I would do. And then again, I got another offer, and it was somebody that was out west, and I knew that if somebody from outside of my area came in, they would have needed me
Yes.
because they didn't have their people in the space, and they would have needed me. I would have had to stay on.
And you
And I was just
wanted
at
to
a
know you were gonna sell.
Yeah, and I was just at a place, honestly, like right before COVID, it was started to get harder with court reporters. They they're independent contractors. They can work if they want to work, not work if they. So that was another challenge, like having enough court reporters to cover all of my jobs. Sometimes there were 50 jobs on in a day. And if you didn't have enough court reporters, then you had to outsource and give to other people, and that cut into your margins,
Yeah.
which I had to do in the end a lot after COVID. But so before COVID, I had several offers, maybe 4 or 5 that I turned down, mostly because of the employee thing. I knew their model. I knew other people that they had done mergers and acquisitions, and I saw what happened in their family of employees, and I just said no. And then this company came in right before COVID, and ultimately the company that I sold to. And that was really where I realized it was probably 3 years before COVID, or no, couldn't have been that many. It had to have been a year before because it was that long during the process of figuring it all out and then COVID hit. So I was going through, I was so nervous. I was so nervous about my employees, and then they promised me they would keep everyone. I had just given everybody big raises too, which I felt really happy about because they were going to take over exactly what I gave everybody. And it I learned through that process, God, I should have done this different. I should have done that different. I would have been worth this much. So the dollar amount that I was offered before COVID was almost half of what I ultimately got, less. Then COVID happened. And COVID just changed everything because the bigger companies, they really took advantage of the costs that they could put costs into their transcripts with the Zoom. So they were charging people for Zoom hookups. It was as simple as that.
Mm.
And so I made a decision. What is it? Zoom? What's it cost to have, how many Zoom ones? I did have to have a lot, and it was a lot of money. But I just used that as my marketing expense instead. And I didn't. So my marketing strategy at that point was use Enright. We don't charge for Zoom hookup. My revenue increased a lot in that period.
Pre-COVID, the offers were either not conducive to employees,
They were
not
all not enough either.
right,
Like the money
not
wasn't.
enough money, not good for employees, and then even if they were, you'd probably have to stay on. So all of those reasons, it did not align.
Mhm.
COVID happens, you see an opportunity to innovate, you say, "Nope, I'm not charging for Zoom. I'm giving Zoom is my marketing strategy and I'm offering that for free."
Mhm.
And from that, business skyrocketed. How much did you grow during COVID?
I mean, between the time that they had first looked at my numbers, I doubled my revenue.
So you doubled the revenue. Do you go back to them? Do they go back to you? This acquired.
Then they came back to me. And also during that process, I realized during COVID, I didn't need all this office space. Like,
Right.
I had like, I don't know, $300,000 in rents a
Oh,
year, and so then I started thinking, I need to start getting out of these leases so that I can put that money back into my
yep.
revenue.
Yep.
And it was the stars were just so aligned. God was so good to me, and everything. I got out of all of the leases before this company came back to me.
So you added that to the bottom line, which when you're valued, you'll be valued on that bottom line.
Right. And I don't know that I would have done that had I thought that it was still in my mind to sell it to them.
Right. Right.
Right.
You weren't even thinking about it because at that point, now you're growing so much.
Hmm.
I mean, and you can make more if you don't have the office space.
And
You
and yeah, and the other part was is during COVID, the court reporters became different. Like
right.
they got used to not having to go out anymore. They could think about it. They just had to get up. They
Sure.
probably had their pajama bottoms on and their slippers and put a pretty top on,
Yep.
and they never had to leave their house. So when COVID started to settle, they didn't want to go back out on jobs, and
Mm.
I was having so I was really tired. I did not like work anymore.
So they came to you and
They
you
came back.
You
I'll
that
never, I'll never forget that day where this guy called and said, "Get Josh back on the game." Like I knew they liked me. I felt it the first time, and it would have gone through probably. And this, like, I was being saved. I was protected because it
wow.
changed so much. And then they came back, and then I was really nervous because I don't know, I knew how much work it was going to be because I had gotten all of the stuff that I was going to have to do, right? That I
You
learned
almost did it before.
all the
Yeah.
due diligence stuff. But then when Josh here in this house, he we spent probably a good week going through all of my numbers. And importantly, like what we did was looked at what the expenses were that I had that this new company was not going to need or incur.
Right.
And so
Right. So they
that all
add
went
that.
back in, and right. So he went through every single number and we took out everything. Like, for instance, I had several of my family members on my payroll. They and they did work for me. They had cushy, great jobs. They really had a good deal.
Of
But
course.
the truth is I didn't need them.
Correct.
I
So it
gave
comes
them
out of
jobs.
your operating income and down to the profit because you're projecting what profit the acquirer would make. And it sounds like Josh is your son-in-law. Yes.
Yeah. So
Okay.
Josh played as that person, and I would highly recommend no one try to do this by themselves because that's what they'll get taken advantage of. And
Yeah.
but also be careful because, big merger and acquisition companies take a big cut. They take a big, they
They
do.
do. So you have to look at and use people that you trust for sure.
Mhm. Somebody who has a good financial background,
Yep.
that can really help you look at your numbers and
Yep. Yep.
someone that you obviously trust. And so I went through all that. He came down, after a week of me coming back and forth from Long Island to Connecticut, working with him, he came downstairs in the kitchen and he said, "This is what your company's worth." And I said, "No freaking way. No way. That's not possible." And he said, "It is. You did a good job. You did a really good job." And I said, it's just my husband was here. We got in the car. We were going back to the ferry. And I said, this can't be real. It just, that like, it's so surreal. Like, that just can't be. And he said, "The numbers aren't lying, Kyle. The numbers are the numbers, and you should talk to them now about your employee." And so that's what we did. And they were like, "Nope, we want everyone. We're going to need your people." Because they asked me if I wanted to stay on. And I said, I guess I would talk about that in a certain capacity, but no, I don't want to feel like I am beholden. You need me for anything. Like, I want my freedom again.
Right.
I would be there for you. But I'm not a sales. It seemed like they wanted me to do sales. And I'm not. I was never a salesperson. I never went out and knocked on doors. Not ever.
So, okay. So you come and you agree upon a number and you agree upon the terms and then.
Well, you agree upon the number and the terms, but then it starts the whole due diligence stuff. And boy, oh boy, I would sit at my kitchen table. I don't have an office in my house, and I couldn't go to the office because I didn't feel good about what I was doing with I almost could cry about it. Really, I felt so worried for them.
Yeah.
And I didn't want them to know that I was doing it because I was so afraid that because it's human nature, right? Like, they could go to a million court reporting companies and go work for them. They didn't have to stay with me.
Right.
And so when I didn't know if it was going to go through, and they're telling me that they're going to save everybody and they're all going to have their jobs. So I'm like, this is the time. I was 64. I mean, it's time. I worked my butt off my whole life. I had no life. I took so many, like, it's time. He's right. Like, I need to do this. Then going through all that due diligence. I mean, so blessed. I had the most amazing, my friend who's my attorney, who was one of my first clients, he represented me. So I felt very comfortable with him. It wasn't like I felt intimidated ever to ask a question. I could ask the stupidest question and he would make me feel so, so smart. Like, I got through it though. But let me tell you something. The whole time I was there sitting at that table, I got up at 7 a.m. and I didn't go to bed till 2 a.m. I wanted everything to be perfect. I wanted this company to see how smart I was and how well I kept my books and how, and then the whole thing with diversifying in your business too. They do not want a company that has all their eggs in one basket.
Right.
So
That's right.
that was another thing I worried a little bit about, because I did have one account that bought in, a little under 20% of my business, but the number was 25% that they got
Yeah.
spooked
Yeah.
about.
Yes.
And then ironically, as time was going by, I was losing business from that client, which was actually a good thing.
Right.
And I would have been really upset had that been happening if I wasn't going to sell my company. But so then I just went through all the due diligence. I worked with this guy out in Texas. I can't tell you how nice they were. They made me feel so safe, so smart, so competent, so like it was just a very it was friendly. It was hard for me because of the volume of work I had to do in such a short period of time. But I did it. And I remember sitting on the couch with my husband saying, I think this is the hardest thing I ever did. But I guess we forget how hard it was when we were alone with our kids. You just forget. It's like having a baby. You don't remember how hard
Right.
things are.
Right. You don't remember, because if you remember, you do it again.
Yeah.
That's why we all have more than one. That's so much.
Mhm. And then, so I kept saying to Josh, I don't know, they're going to take off for this. They're going to take off for that. They're going to take off. He's like, no, just relax. I was so afraid to give them. They wanted to know, like all my clients, they wanted to know what my rates were. And I'm like, well, what if it doesn't go through? They'll steal my clients and they'll lower their rates and I was so nervous about that. So I went through the whole LOI process and I made sure, like, I didn't give that, and they wanted it. And I said, I'm not comfortable yet. Even like my court reporters' names, they wanted that. And I'm like, I am not comfortable giving you any of that information till I know I'm closer to knowing that this is a done deal and you're not going to take off like what I think my company is
So
worth.
you move that more to the end of the process, right? I had that at the end too. I don't think I introduced to clients until like the day before.
Well, I had to do it before they actually gave me the asset purchase
Before they gave you the agreement?
and they didn't ask me what I evaluated the company at. They just came back with it was the exact same number.
Because typically if the multiples are within market and
And you have someone like Josh, he
exactly,
gave
Josh
them.
did it based on reality. So
And I do think that was so helpful was the way he presented my numbers. It was so incredibly detailed and it was
yes.
all on Excel, and he has all these programs. That's why it's important that people go to someone that has those tools so that when they present their numbers, it looks like you really did do your homework. You know your stuff. They're right. My husband was right. The numbers don't lie. And they couldn't because it was so clean. I used QuickBooks, and we took QuickBooks and we just made Excel spreadsheets for every category. So it was pretty hard like at a glance, they could see I was being truthful and it was real.
Transparent with the numbers, and therefore that's why you didn't have a problem in due diligence.
Mm-hmm.
If you're really transparent, generally you will not have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Just having that detail put together.
Yeah.
Transparent and detailed is
Yeah. And then it was kind of crazy because I have a lucky number. I'm not going to tell you what it is.
okay.
It's my lucky number.
Okay.
But so when I went to sign the agreement, I said, I want to wait 2 more days to sign it
Oh
because
my gosh.
everything I've ever done in my career, I've always signed on that day. And it was like a little spiritually like superstitious. He thought I was crazy probably that I wanted to wait 2 more days. But
That's amazing.
Mhm.
Okay, so you sign and now you're in a new life. Tell me what life is like.
So yeah, so
Like,
it wasn't so easy telling everybody, the
no,
employees and the court reporters. I think a lot of people weren't happy with me, and I like everyone
that
to
must
like
have been
me.
hard. That's
hmm
hard.
But I've accepted that, and I hope that they understand that I could. Like a lot of people were mad that I didn't tell them, ahead, and then I just had to tell after I closed. It is what it is. But so life, I did keep the other company because they said, why are we not buying your transcription company? And I said, well, I have an amazing person that has worked for me for 30 years. And the transcriptionists themselves, I don't know them like I did the court
Yeah.
reporters.
Yeah.
But I cared about this person that was running the company for me, and she's in her 50s. And I said, unless you can guarantee me you're going to give her a job and she's going to have a job until she's ready to retire, I'm not going to sell it because I care about her too much. And so I still have that.
Mm.
and I didn't sell it. So I still do a little bit of work with that, but not a lot. She does most of all the work. I just really keep the books and am there if there's a problem. But so now it's 2 years. This month it was 2 years in February. When I first sold, my mom got really sick. It was just like the calling for me to be available at that time was amazing. I lived with her for 3 months and cared for her after it. And I was able to like give her all the love she deserved. And, I really cared for her 100%. And my husband was so great. He helped me with the other kids in Bayport, and I'd go back and forth. And I just kept saying, Mommy, God just blessed me so much because look, I got to be the chosen one. I'm taking care of you. And then she ended up dying in my arms on my father's 100th birthday
Oh,
a year ago. Yeah. So I had that whole year where it didn't really hit me right away because I was taking care of her. And then I have my daughters and my grandchildren. And then I bought a place. I bought another place out east that I always dreamed of. I mean, that's another thing I could say. Like, people need to manifest what they want in their lives. They need to say,
yeah.
someday I want this and someday I want that. And I am going to do that. And, if you keep putting those words out into the universe, you will do it. It's the people that just stay in that safe little place where, oh, I can't do that. Then you won't. Right. So
Yeah.
my whole life was always just about, oh, I want that. And it seems like that's what's happening still. And now I help my daughter. Her nanny just had a baby. So I said, I don't want you to have a transitional nanny. And I am the happiest grandma in the world. I come here Tuesdays through Fridays and I take care of my two little ones here. And then in Bayport, my other daughter, who's a teacher, and her husband's a teacher, and then the most fabulous people in the world, such good people. I watch their three children. I put one on the bus in the morning and pick the other two up in the afternoon. I do my Pilates 2 days a week.
I love it.
I have tons of friends. I like to socialize and see my friends. And yeah, and I like being by the water. So I've made a few investments near the water.
And
And
all from starting out with that. I just keep picturing you with that little 9-month-old and 3-year-old on your
how I thought, like, how am I going to do
the
this?
carrots and peas. Like it's just what a story. I feel so grateful that you came on today and shared your story with us, Colleen. You are definitely an inspiration. Thank you so
No,
much.
you're so welcome. Thanks, Carrie. It was fun to come and nice to get to know you.